This is the CW Spiral, a podcast run by three survivors of the CW's calling in 2022. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network and the WB, the latest news and in-depth Sporterville discussions of the best and messiest shows to ever grace the small screen. Okay, you guys, I know some of you guys know this, but it is our 100th episode. Cannot believe we've been doing this for so long. So we are celebrating. I feel like we should say some words, but I'm at a blank for how, other than what we're going to do with our Q&A a little bit later, how to celebrate it, how to put the impact of our podcast for us into a speech.
I think I've said before on this multiple times, when we started this podcast 2 years ago, no one could have imagined the history we would end up covering. We're practically historians at this point. So I think that's a good legacy for this podcast. We started it at what was probably the most unusual time for the network, and we've documented all of it, which is insane. I can't believe we've done 100 episodes. That's just out of this world. But look at some of the stuff we've covered over the last 2 years: the merging, the new Nexstar taking over, the new CW. Now we're still in the new CW era. We're waiting on it to finalize what it looks like. I don't know how to even put that into words. I've been kind of counting down for this episode for the last few weeks, thinking we're almost at 100, and now we've made it, and it's just 100 whole episodes of covering history. Could you imagine?
I feel like we need a cake. I know,
Yeah.
Sabrina, you don't like cake, but I see every time a TV show hits 100 episodes, they have a big party and there's a cake, and I'm like, we need a cake.
Well, okay, so it'd be a cake for everyone else, and if I could just get a little corn muffin with a little 100 calendar candle, that would make me happy. I love a corn muffin.
Yes. Celebrate how you want. A part of me considers should I wear the outfit I wore on the first episode today? I was like, no, we don't need to do that. Let's not do Easter eggs and reference
I don't
that.
even remember what I wore.
I don't
Probably a
remember what I wore
Dynasty
either.
shirt.
Yeah.
I see. For me, I just remember being so close to the camera, just really close. That's the thing that I remember. Was I in my purple shirt though? I had this purple shirt
I
that I really
don't.
love.
I have zero memory of that
Understandable.
day, what we talked about.
I remember I had the big chunky headphones because my earphones weren't working at the time. Thank goodness I dropped those because they did not look good on me. Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. It really does. I know we've recorded little snippets here and a few specials here and there, but the fact that just to do this so constantly with 100 episodes, and we're now nearly 2.5 years removed from when we started it. It's kind of flown by, let's be honest. It doesn't feel like we've done this for 100 times, sit down to have a conversation here. It's just wild.
Time flies when the CW is crumbling around your feet.
It really does.
When we did
No shade. Just tea.
I mean, it's a new era.
Yeah.
Every year.
They're rebuilding.
They're evolving.
Yeah. Maybe not in a direction we want them to.
Mm-hmm.
But
you know what?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, that's what these 100 episodes have been about. We've been on the ride. We're still on the ride. We'll see how it ends.
Yes, which means, of course, you guys, if you've been here for all 100 episodes, you know what we're about to do. We're going to slide right in to CW News because we do have some. For All American Homecoming fans, Season 3 will premiere on July 8th. Yes, that is deep in the summer. As we had said before, it wasn't going to be able to go forward until All American started landing its Season 6 plane. That's clearly what's going to happen. I'm sorry, there's going to be a 2-month and some change wait longer, but that is what's going to happen.
2 months away. That's insanity.
Yep. Which also means that the All-American Season 6 finale is 2 months and some change away as well, because it'll finale on July 15th. To be honest, I don't know how this is going to impact the CW when it comes to when they decide to tell everybody what they're renewing. Because they could choose to wait until July, or they could just choose to tell us when everybody else is telling us, which is this month.
Right.
Good point.
July does feel so far away when you say it like that, especially since it's usually around the 18th, around that upfronts week when they have those decisions are made. And I know for the last couple of years it's been murky. Nexstar's got what it wants its CW to look like right now. Are we still going to go through another murky era of, you know what, we're going to hold that decision. We're not going to tell you right away. We can't really be making a decision about Homecoming before it's aired any episodes, can we? Especially not when Next Star's all about. We need
Well,
to.
I mean, haven't they done that in the past?
Oh,
We
they have.
survived the Cullings that did that, yes. They're just
Yeah.
like, we got the last 2 episodes together, we're good. And everyone's like, I'm not sure how you're gonna end this series.
They filmed full seasons and we're like, this is the final season.
I mean, yeah, technically they've done that, but hasn't Brad also said that this season is all about viewership and if the shows continue to perform well? And I know there have been recent reports that maybe contradict that, but like, it still kind of wouldn't be good calling a show before it even gets a chance to air its next season. I mean, like we've been here before with this network, but
I know, and see, with Brad and anyone else from CW who tells us things in the moment, they're always changing. We're always
Yeah,
shifting. So, like,
nothing is Bible.
yeah, because
Mhm.
that comment might be true in the month that he says it. And then,
I mean, I relate because I say things
yeah.
like that. Or like, I love the show, and like a month later, I'm like, what was that? Or like, I hate that show, and like 2 months later, I'm like, I'm obsessed.
So, I mean, it might be like, yeah, it was as long as they did well, it's fine.
Mhm.
But they also have, like, I want to know, like, at the time it was said, was the fall schedule not finalized? Or was the schedule
Mhm.
for what we're going to do not finalized? Because if that's the case, then it's always going to be it's going to be changing because there's just no way for it to be as long as they do well. If you have other shows that are performing to where you want them to be and you don't have to license them because they're in-house or they're
Mhm.
co-production, so they're vastly more cheaper than tapping the American studios who seem to be ready to pull out. If they can't make the series on bigger budgets, they're just going to leave.
Well, if you're an All-American fan and it is not renewed, but for season 7 by July 15th, then watch it on Netflix because it'll be on Netflix by July 23rd, possibly. That's 8 days
Nice
after
plug.
the 15th. I mean, it's information that I know, so I have to share it. I don't want to gatekeep. So I think that would mean Homecoming. I think Homecoming, it's not the 8 day, it's like 2 weeks after. So like
Okay.
by like September, it should be on Netflix.
Hmm.
So keep those dates in mind if it's not renewed and you want to, I don't know. I know in the past I was like, people were like, watch the show on Netflix with like Charmed and stuff. And I'm like, it's not gonna, sorry, it's not gonna. But I don't know. I feel like it could make a little bit of noise in this era to just be like, hey,
Mhm.
look, our show's #1 on Netflix. Nudge,
Sure.
nudge.
Well, I mean, and I know, Reed, that you are a champion of deterring this thing that people do when something gets canceled to immediately want it to go to Netflix.
And look at me
But
now.
All American, though, potentially even All American Homecoming might have a road to a Netflix pickup.
I'm
Mm.
so surprised that it seems like these two shows should have had like some sort of Netflix backing like Riverdale and Dynasty did.
Hmm.
I don't know. Because they are like, besides those two, like the two shows that have probably like the biggest Netflix presence, and they don't even have international to
Mhm.
back that up too.
I do wonder what it would have been like if Netflix had like taken that over as well and it turned into an international. Would it have been a phenomenon like in the way that Riverdale and Dynasty became, in the way that Suits has become?
We'll
That would have
never
been
know.
interesting. We never will. We never will. Who knows? Maybe we'll get all 6 seasons of All American at some point because that show's basically non-existent outside of the US these days. Um, but it would have been
I don't
nice to
know. Would you
say.
guys find it offensive? They have like an American football show.
I don't know. I
They
mean,
call it
like.
football for 6 seasons, and you're like, this isn't football.
I mean, I see your point. I always do wonder how some of the more like obviously we love US TV over here and everything like that, but obviously that's a very based on US sports and stuff kind of things like that.
Yeah.
That's why I wonder would that draw as well around the world?
Was Friday Night Lights a hit over there?
I think it did air on TV. I don't think it was like a hit, but I do think it was popular enough with the teen audiences on television when on the time that it aired.
Probably
Um,
fascinating to be like, what is American football?
Right, I know what you mean, and it kind of it was always acceptable as a subplot of a teen show. Like nobody ever batted any eyelids because like things like football would pop up as subplots of Glee, of the Vampire Diaries, of
Oh,
other
true. Yeah,
shows over
yeah.
the years. Smallville, of course, in its early seasons, and no one ever asked any questions because the football was never really that important to the plot. I do wonder if that would if football and sports being important to the plot would impact a show like. around the world, would that impact its levels of success? Would people be interested in the teen characters if they were only involved in a wider sports program? It is interesting. Like Reed said, we'll probably never know because they missed that opportunity to make that happen. But I do
Yeah.
think All American could have been more successful globally than it is. I know it's literally in the title. All American is a big hit in the US, and that's all that really matters these days. But we're in this globalization of TV era. I am curious to know whether that would have been one of the lucky ones.
Well, let me pitch then. So for those who are listening, our international listeners, and you've never seen All American and you're deterred by the football, let me remind you, it is also a soap. So in the first season, two of the characters who are interested in one another then have to split when they assume that they might be siblings because they're one.
Why is that always on the CW? The
Right?
incest plots are just like, it's jarring. It's
It was-
multiple shows. It's not just like
I
in a
know.
vacuum a couple. It's like on more than one hand you can count.
hmm
I won't. I'm tempted to, but I won't.
But like it was a very soapy plot, and it involved a deep like thing about like one, we like each other, but whoa, and then two, our parents might have had an affair. So it was like very like years ago, and you were the result. It was very well, no, your brother was the result, so like it's very tense. Um, and then just like, oh, this is like also there's dating triangles, there's best friends. Someone in one season nearly fell to her death over a cliff. Like there's much for you to dig into. There's been shootings. We're battling out on the football field. There's teen pregnancy. Like there's just so much
Aren't there like
that
fraternity? Oh, that is kind of what you were alluding to
yes. Well, see, that's
first.
because the girl lied. hmm And that was a whole plot too. But then it turned out okay. There's also adoption storylines. I mean, there's so much to dig your teeth into if you're not interested in the football. Like if you like fall asleep as soon as he puts a helmet on, understand. But you will wake back up when we get back to the relationship dramas and the family drama.
Y'all are missing out on All American by the sounds of things.
But moving away from the All American universe to 64th Street, which is airing season 2 in starting July 22nd. To be clear, season 1 did not air on the CW. I don't know if we need to like wait for a summer schedule and perhaps it will air in June.
It'd be so
You
weird if they didn't announce season 1 and did like a week later.
Right? So, but it is available to stream on CWTV.com and the CW
Currently?
app. I believe so.
Oh,
Let me know.
I was so confused when the news dropped, and I was like, "Am I missing something? When did season 1 air? Is season 1
Mhm.
airing before?" There was no mention of season 1 anywhere in any of the news posts.
So we still don't know if
Yes.
season one's going to air.
Season 1 is available to stream on CWTV.com and the CW app. We do not know if season 1 is going to air, but we also don't have a summer schedule yet.
I would
So
doubt that it is.
I
That's
would
so
doubt
strange.
too, since it's been available on their streaming platform. But you never know. They
So
might be
weird.
surprised. Courtney B. Vance is coming to CW June, and instead of July. I don't know.
It's like those articles, what should I watch before Deadpool and Wolverine? And it's like all 33 Marvel movies. Like, what should I watch before season 2? Season 1, obviously, but it's not airing on the CW. That's so strange to me. But could that be an indicator of what the Everyone Else Burns situation could be like? Because that show, or like 2 episodes, got pulled, but it's been renewed by the CW for a season 2. So is season 2 just going to air on the CW without any of the context of season 1? Now that are we going to start pushing the streaming service a bit more? As like you if you want to watch season 1, you can do it online, but we're just kicking things off from season 2. I assume that'll get the ratings up a little bit over where season 1 was, but yeah, it's a very interesting situation around season 2s without season 1s.
It is. I would also like them to stop quiet canceling. If it's canceled,
Yeah,
please tell us.
so we know.
61st
Mhm.
Street or just in general?
In general, like because with Everyone Else Burns, it's been months since it was pulled and there's been no understanding of whether or not it's going to carry forward. The same thing happened with like the other like the acquisitions. They've just been quietly been moved. Like you have to just find out. With CW, it's like a little mystery game. I don't know why we're doing this. Like we never know when new things are coming to their streaming platform. You just click on it and you're surprised. Like
Hmm.
I clicked on and I was surprised to see channels. And I was like, well, when did this happen? Because I don't remember channels being here. Like you find out like the Barons was streaming. Like you weren't watching it on TV because they pulled it, but you could stream it on the streaming site. And I was like, I don't believe there were any commercials about saying Baron has moved to the CW app if you would like to continue to watch. I feel like be more communicative, CW.
Remember how exciting it was? Was it in January when they did their whole rebrand with the stage and the new logo and everything? Where did that energy go?
She disappeared
With
on a
like
wind.
telling us things.
No, they were very happy about telling
The
us about the
colors.
rebranding. Yes.
What
I
happened?
I don't know. See, I'd never seen the graphic design team be able to just hold so many interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it, but I was also where you're right. Where did the energy go? We just left. Like I don't all the new content they dropped. I've not seen any of the unscripted reality people anywhere.
Is that yeah, rescinded? I don't care enough to finish asking that question. Never mind.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, but again, Mole, if you could tell them to be more communicative so that we know things instead of being surprised by things,
Yeah, we don't want a
that'd be
situation
great.
where like someone stopped Sarah Paulson on the street and that we finally got the answers about Ratched season 2 like 3 or 4 years after the show aired. We don't want that with everyone else, Burns.
So messy.
I think we can end it there for our CW news thing. We are in just to let everyone aware, we are in the upfront season. Today we're recording May 2nd. CBS is going to be revealing or should be revealing their schedule today. So and then their presentations for NBC on May 13th. And for some reason I want to say Fox too, but I could be wrong about that last one. But May is when we find out things. So we might get a slew of news, we might not. Generally, it's a little bit weirder for CW because they don't play by the same rules their siblings do a lot of the time. But though I can no longer find the date for when they're supposed to have their upfronts brunch, I believe they are supposed to have
Brunch.
one. Right. I believe they are supposed to have one this month in New York somewhere. I just do not. Michael, you two could not find it, right? We went on a
Yeah,
Google
we
search
do.
and couldn't find a thing anymore. And I swore I saw it in a Deadline article.
I remember us having that conversation, but it's been like erased from the internet.
I know, weirdness. But anyway, yeah, news potentially this month. Hopefully, Wildcard season 2 is announced, and that's the only thing I want from May from the CW.
I know, like, what's the whole, do they need a GoFundMe? I will chip in. What's happening?
I think it's just I really think it's the just negotiating for the co-productions because it's supposed to air in both countries, which this is no spoiler, but there is potentially the just to not to scare anybody, but the Canadian Writers Guild is has authorized a strike. They're hoping that they will not have to strike to get a fair agreement, but it's on the table if it comes to that, which would impact CW's shows,
Yeah.
just so that everybody is aware. I don't know how many of them, but we know it would impact Sullivan's Crossing and Wildcards if Wildcards gets a season 2 this side. And I don't know if they're bringing back Family Law, but it would definitely impact Family Law too. So just put that on everybody's radar. If the Writers Guild of Canada strikes, CW's in trouble.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
on that note,
Into the questions. So thank you guys for sending along questions for our Q&A pod. We're very excited to dive into them. What's funny is we're going to start with Shanks. And Shanks asked what our favorite new show is for the CW and how we feel about the new era.
is it the favorite new show just in general for CW or like any new show?
There was not a clarification on that point. So I wonder, we can do both. We can do a CW one, which I believe it's the same one for all of us, and we can choose
I was gonna say
one that
that.
Yeah, on the
has
count
nothing
of
to do with
three.
CW.
1, 2, 3.
Wild
Wild
cards.
cards. I mean, there's no competition, let's be honest.
I know.
No. I mean,
I was tempted to say Walker Independence, but that was like 2 years ago.
I know.
it's still up there though. You're right. Justice for Wendy. But as far as new shows in general, I cannot think of any new shows that I have been that like is my favorite new one. Like there are things I've watched, but I don't know about a favorite new one. It's not coming
There's
to
not a
mind
lot
right
of
now.
like new stuff that has happened this spring, right?
Mm-mm.
No. I
I don't
guess I
even
could say
think like even Netflix, I haven't, there's nothing really. I mean, a
no.
show that was new to me, I watched, as you guys know, La Brea, and I went on a journey with that show, and I came out of it just like obsessed.
Mm.
Like it
Short and
was
sweet, right?
the hottest mess, but man, did I enjoy it.
Love that. And I agree with what you said. There's not been that much on. Like I've been binging 911, as you guys know, and I've been like I'm at like season 4 now, which was around pandemic time, so I'm catching up. I'm like, does that count as new? Does that, well, I mean, it's new to me. So I'm enjoying that. As far as new shows go, X-Men 97 has to take the kick for me because it's just so good. You guys know that I spent the whole year since we started binge watching the original animated series, and I made it just in time. So I was then able to watch X-Men 97, and it's an incredible follow-up. The standard of writing is out of this world. I'm not ready for it to end in 2 weeks. But we have a season 2. Um, and it feels weird even calling this a new show because it came and went as quick as The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. Big Rick and Michonne fan. Loved the two of them. Didn't adore the finale, but loved everything about the show in general. So as far as new content goes, they were my two big ones of this year. But yeah, other than wild cards, of course, it just feels like it's been a quiet year for TV.
It has been, and I don't have a pick that's like actually
Didn't you
generally
love,
new.
was it this year? Was it Percy Jackson or was that last
Yeah,
year?
That was this year. See, there's too much time.
yeah.
Well, it started last year. Oh,
Still
so it
did
did
over
not come
Christmas.
to mind, but I like literally
It's a
talk
new
about it
show.
every few days. So yes, Percy Jackson. It is a new show. It's interesting. I think my mind is like uh, Shanks asked period, and my mind circled through all the broadcast shows and none of the streaming.
I know there's like really, broadcast is in a weird place, I guess, with new shows. There's like what, Elsbeth? I haven't watched it.
I don't know. It looks cute. It looks quirky. I just haven't watched it either.
Yeah, it feels weird to jump into like the third show in a franchise, even though it
Hmm.
really doesn't
Mhm.
seem like it has much to do with The Good Wife or The Good Fight. But I'm like, I don't know. It feels strange to be like, I'm gonna try this show that I don't know any of the history about.
Well, I think is she even in the same city? I don't. She moves to New York, and she was a recurring
I
character
thought it
in
took
those
place in
things.
New York.
See, I don't know then. I think she was a Boston. She's from a different city. I think that's what the synopsis said. I feel like I
I have
wrote
no
some
idea.
posts about it, but now I'm blanking. So back to Percy. I really enjoyed Percy. I really did enjoy Percy. I think that the young actors on that show are really going to go far. They do need to film these quickly because they are children, which also means that they are growing up fast. And it starts with,
Tweens,
well,
pre-tweens.
they are now teens. So, and we're only on season one. Like they're 12 in the first season. They are
Gotta
all
get those
now,
time jumps.
right? They're 14 now, with exception to Aryan, I believe is 16, and they have four more books to get through.
Oh,
So I'm
Well,
like, move faster.
back to back season film, and here we need.
Otherwise, they're gonna be in their early 20s playing 18, which is not a bad thing, but it just means they might want to try to do other things in their acting career, and Percy might kind
sure.
of feel like a little bit like a cage.
Yeah.
If we can't move quickly, and speedily, but it's Disney, so I don't know how quickly we're going to move. But that's yeah, as far as the new era of the CW, it depends on the week. I mean, it really
Hmm.
does. Like, if we get good news, I'm like on high, talking about like CW is so great, this new era is shaping up, and then when we have no news and we're kind of just floating, and all the other networks are talking about the things that they're excited about, the things that they're piloting, then I'm just like, where are you? I thought you wanted to be Big Five. Like, you're not giving us information, and also, why are we paying? Why are we not paying people?
Yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah.
have about probably like 50 episodes answering this question in various ways.
Mhm.
Very up and down. It's
Yeah.
when they cancel a show we like, it's sadness and anger, and then when it's making a sort of interesting decision, we're kind of like, oh. And then when it's wild card smearing, it's excitement. And then when it's weeks like this, it's kind of just like confusion. So I
Yeah.
think as a whole, I would sum it up as, I don't know.
That's better than any answer I'm about to say. Um, I think this is a great question for a 100th episode specifically because we've, as Reed said, we've had multiple feelings about it over the last 2 years. And the thing is, like, if we had started this podcast 4 or 5 years ago, we would have been in one of the CW's primes and we would have been having the time of our lives reporting on whatever nonsense they
Imagine.
were up to every week. It would have been great. But at the same time, I remember when the three new pilots came and we were trying to review the Winchesters, Walker Independence, Gotham Knights, Stargirl, all in the same little bubble. And we were so stressed trying to keep up with that show. Reed was keeping us up on In the Dark. And there's
We
another
still
show
had
I'm
such
blanking on.
optimism too.
We
Dynasty.
did. We did.
Mhm.
Dynasty was the other one. No way were we getting through that on a full time basis. So maybe constantly reviewing shows in the CW's prime would not have been for us. But I know as fans, we would have loved to have done that. So yes, a part of me wishes we were able to cover back then and we'd started this earlier. But at the same time, like I said, we inadvertently started at such a good time for the network because it was, well, it means it's a terrible time, but it was a good time for us covering it as a journalist because there was so much history to cover. Um, and it's true, like that fan within you is like, "Ugh, I miss the gory days." But objectively, you're like, this could be interesting. This is interesting. And I'd never seen that one come in. And then during one of these like quiet periods, like, what are we doing? Are we still covering the CW? Is the CW still a thing? What do they want to look like going forward? So, yeah, I don't know. I think is a good answer to sum all that up because we're going back and forth every week depending on whatever they tell us. And sometimes we're really excited about it. Other times we're kind of indifferent to it. But I think until and I know this is another question coming up. I think until it figures out its true identity, we're going to keep feeling like that because there's just an awful lot of back and forth at the moment.
Mhm. Actually, let's segue into that one. Where is that Joe? Yes, Joe. So, Joe had said we have a taste of how renewals work slash don't work under the new folks. What do you see as their new brand slash identity? And what does, I'm assuming BS means Brad Sports, want them to be when they grow up? This is another I don't know. Aside from that they want to have the same gravitas as the other networks, there really isn't an identity yet that they have found other than trying to emulate what their siblings do, which is frustrating because it has also alienated the audience that made CW what it is. We are no longer a tastemaker. We are now a network that is trying to figure itself out, which is very difficult because as fans of the network, it is hard seeing it struggle like this to find its identity. It feels like there hasn't been a lot of understanding of what caused people to build fandoms around their shows and what interests them. That it is not, the market is not the same for the CW as it is for the other networks. And I know they're trying to make it like, oh, well, the other networks have done procedural well and they're doing comedies well. And I was like, arguably, though, not really. CBS, yes. NBC is running with Dick Wolf entertainment shows. Like, that's basically what they're going to do. But they've struggled with their comedies. ABC has Abbott Elementary and Grey's Anatomy, and they're bunked down. It's like what they're doing. Everything else is sort of they're just trying it. Like I think what's funny to me as who paying attention to the other networks, they're all just doing their best too. The thing is, they have 3 to 4 hits that they can rely on, and because they are more established, people just flick them on. If they don't even care if the show is something that they watch, they'll just leave it running. So you'll get like sure, 4 million views for CBS is not good, but 4 million views, Fox would love that. Fox would take that immediately for much of their programming. So CW is in a bad boat compared to them, but the boat's not that great for the rest of them either, depending on what day of the night they're airing something.
Hmm.
Hmm. It is kind of like they're chasing views at the moment. That's what it feels like. That's what their
Mhm.
brand is. They're looking like, honestly, Wildcards isn't getting that much more than Walker Independence was and Legends of Tomorrow was, but it's obviously far cheaper for them to make. So if they can get those victories with spending less, that's a good thing for them. Um, but like what Wildcards is a huge example of a success. I think if they want to make more shows, they might make them like that because they're fun, they're procedural. And we've had this conversation on the pod before about how if there's any kind of what's the word? Synergy in what they're doing and any kind of synergy between the shows they're doing, it's that most of them have a procedural element to them or that they're somewhat law-based as well. So of course you have wild cards, you have sight unseen, you've still the family law, which is a carryover from the previous one. These cheap little fun shows that provide solid entertainment and that are cheap to make, I think that's the only kind of identity they've carved out. I don't think it's really an identity. We did talk about how there's going to be that good cop, bad cop procedural coming as well. Again, that's the only kind of thing, common denominator here. There's not really any identity. Like, this is the same network that did teen dramas and superheroes. You knew what you were getting when you flicked it on. We don't really have that now. Because at the same time as you have wild cards, you also have um, you had Everyone Else Burns for a brief time. You had the other sitcoms that I'm randomly blanking on. You have reruns of The Connors. You have The Chosen, and you have Sullivan's Crossing. So while there's similarities maybe from show to show, as a collective, as a unit, very little similarities in what they're doing right now. So I guess they're just looking for cheap ways to get views. And I mean, so far it's working. It hasn't worked completely, so I can't fault them on that. It is working. But for this, all the conversations about wanting to concoct an identity, this is the network that had the biggest one of them all, and they kind of turned their backs on that. So I do hope going forward we can get a stronger identity from Next Star CW, because right now it's just kind of uncertain.
Mhm.
Yeah, their brand is garage sale. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right, there's like no cohesion when it comes to like tone with the shows or even genres. It's just kind of like trying to figure out what works. Like you can't have like a biblical history drama and then also like a modern comedy drama procedural and then like if I'm completely honest, I don't think we're going to see an identity form until the current four shows from the old era are gone.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I know that's probably a really jarring statement to make, but I think if we're still holding on to the past, which is All American, All American Homecoming, Walker, and we know Superman Lois is ending, I think until those shows are in the rear view and they can figure out, they decide what direction they're going in, like what basket they're putting their eggs in and forming an identity around that. Because right now it's like 61st Street, and they have Family Law, and then they put Ride On to see if maybe
Mhm.
the Yeehaw would be a good avenue to go down. Clearly, it was not because they didn't double down on it. So I don't know. I just feel like it's still very volatile, and there's no stability. And I think it's gonna, as much as they put up the facade that they were kind of like, oh, look at us, we have our new logo and we have everything. I still think that they're still very, very much in the early days of figuring themselves out, and that probably will not happen for another 2 years.
Mhm.
Mm. Which is interesting because I know the road to profitability was supposed to be 2025. We will see if
I mean,
that
it could
ends up
still be
being the
profitable,
case.
but it could still be a hot mess. Front facing.
Yeah, well, I mean, so my concern is if the profitability is coming directly from the sports content, the thing that they had said, when when Nexstar said when they first took over the CW for majority ownership, was that they wanted to focus more on the unscripted content. But unscripted for them has not paid off outside of the sports arena. And that might turn the CW into sports. And
I feel
that's
like
just
if they're gonna
not,
make a profit on these shows, then they need to funnel that money. I know they have bills to pay or whatever and debts, and I get it. I'm not a business person, but I see what they have to do. But funnel some of that money into creating more original. They just need like one really good season because it's been so chaotic with them debuting in different times with different shows and trying to make that one be the one, you know? They need like a really good actual like debut fall season where they have like five new scripted originals with like fuzzy concepts, a good cast, like the Leighton Meester one. Maybe that's their debut season, and they have like a couple more good scripted originals to back that up and flesh out a schedule. Like even like thinking back to the debut season of the CW when it was like, or maybe was it the first like fall season where they had like Gossip Girl and like all it just felt so
yeah.
fun and fresh and new and like you wanted to check it out. I just don't think that incentive is completely there because it's like there's just like one thing maybe and you can't put all of that on Vanessa Morgan.
You
It,
cannot. It's just, I think the Leighton Meester one is scheduled for 2025, but I
And
don't
if we
feel,
need to push, you know, a full fresh start for fall 2025, I'll see you there.
Yeah. It is because I remember they were saying we thought they were going to launch anew with fall 2024 because they're holding Superman and Lois to it. WWE NXT arrives but even those two programs they feel so unlike what Next Star CW is supposed to look like, and yet they're two of the ones they're putting most focus on in the fall. Superman and Lois makes sense because they haven't really waved off any of the superhero shows with the attention they deserve. At least this one's going to get some of them. WWE doesn't sound that unusual because the original CW did have it. Um, so I do think as a television show that one works because there's the entertainment aspect, there's the fictional characters aspect of that one. But agreed, like if they start in a football match in prime time or in like even in daytime or whatever, it doesn't go with whatever's on the network. So this goes back to the whole chasing the views kind of thing that they're doing, and I get it, and those deals bring in money, and that's great. But it's just all the programming just does not go together. We mentioned how we thought Walker was more in line with what the new CW wanted the programming to look like, and yet from the outside standpoint, it sounds like maybe All American stands a better chance of going forward than Walker does going forward. So everything's just up in the air right now. There seems to be kind of like no like linear, clear direction of where they're going. All the original ideas for what we thought they wanted have kind of fallen away, and it doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So I agree. I don't think we're going to get that. Certain ground or that stable
Kind of
ground
like
in
a choose
this
your own
fall.
adventure, and I would like to stop choosing my own adventure.
Yeah.
Yes, because we do need a strong fall TV season would be great. I would love if, there was some teasing. There was some indication that besides Superman and Lois and WWE NXT,
Mhm.
that there was something to be excited for. I mean, like even back during our pilot era when we were talking about Gotham Knights and Walker Independence and Winchesters, it was fun being able to like have our opinions about what was supposed to be coming and whether it was going to get picked up for order, and then be proven wrong as we had watched the premieres and whatnot, and to see how they quickly develop fan bases, and for that to not be happening right now for anything that CW might be bringing because there isn't any talk of what they are. I mean, like we've known since last year that Joan was coming. Are we talking about Joan stateside? We are not. Like the librarian's next chapter, which seems more like an old CW thing than the current CW thing. We got like a still of the photos, but there's not been any like talk from the network about anything in the cast, of course, but like I don't know, it's just not buzzing the way you would want it to buzz. So it's a really frustrating era.
Mhm.
I feel like we could use this though to segue into Mandy's question because Mandy wants to know what our favorite CW era is. It's like a three-part question. So starting with the favorite CW era, I'm gonna sit on it for a second because I need to think a little bit longer on it.
I know what mine is.
You go.
Tell us.
Mine is probably like, I don't know if it's a definable era, but it is definable to me. Like, I feel like 2007 to 2011, which is without giving away my age, when I was a teenager. And there was just nothing more exciting to me than the shows that the CW was airing when I was a teenager. And I think that's true to a lot of millennials. We have a lot of nostalgia as millennials for the things that we liked when we were younger. And as much as things don't age well, I think they do. The th we really have a dear place in our hearts for the things that were formative for us. Um, and for me, that is like 90210. Like that's when that show was in its heyday, was like 2008 to 2011. Even though it was on until 2013. But yeah, that's my favorite era was when it was still like a haven for youth skewing entertainment. Um, but yeah, that's my favorite era.
Mhm. like you, Reed, I have an obvious answer, and all you have to do is know me to know what my obvious answer is. But I also do want to make clear that that's not just the reason I got into the CW. It's my journey with the network has been so bizarre because obviously when I was a teenager, I didn't know what the CW was. I was just watching a typical episode of SmackDown on Friday night, and when the Undertaker walked up the aisle, I heard the cameras or the commentator saying, "Thank you for watching our season premiere on the CW." I have vivid memories of September 22nd, 2006. And I'm like, what is this?
Michael and dates is like, what?
I never forgot it. I never forgot it. And I'm like, what is this? And then a few years later, I started watching Smallville and then figured out that it was on the CW. And then when I did my research, I realized, hold on a minute, I've watched a lot of WB shows, which obviously then eventually turned into the
Wait,
CW.
hold on, pause. I have a question. So
Sure.
you didn't watch Smallville until it was on the CW?
I didn't even watch Smallville until there was only 1 year of it left. Um,
Ah,
I did,
wait, scandal. I thought you were like a day one fan. This is how I
No,
find out.
no, no. I was 8, Reed, when Smallville started. I shouldn't have said that. I was 8 when Smallville started. I wouldn't have known what it was about. My mind was not fully formed for the teen drama yet. It
I know,
needed
I
a couple
got you.
of
I
more
got you.
years.
You
Um,
got to it when you were ready for it.
yeah,
I support that. But
yeah,
I didn't know that. I
I
thought you had a
know.
longer
Yeah.
journey with that
See,
show. Okay, I'm sorry, continue.
I didn't. I remember when I was younger and I would get Batman comics, there would be pictures of Smallville advertised on the back, and that the pictures, even though these were comics, very leaned into the teen drama element of it. And as a kid, teen drama is not the first thing you think of when you're a superhero fan. So it wasn't until my teenage years that I started watching Smallville. And then there were a couple of other shows that I'm like, oh wow, that was on the CW too. But I don't think it was until I started watching the Vampire Diaries that I was like, I'm all in on a CW. And then I was watching trailers for The Secret Circle and Ringer and other shows that aired on the CW. What a time to be alive that was.
When they released, not to interrupt you again,
Go ahead.
but you said the buzzword, and I think The Secret Circle always gets me because I have never been more excited for a show. I didn't
Yeah.
watch the show, but when they would release like at upfronts like 7-minute trailers
Right.
for their new
Mhm.
shows in May before they premiered, I must have watched that Secret Circle one like 15,000 times.
It was
It
so
was
good.
so good.
It really was. I remember being slightly disappointed by the pilot because you know the way those 7 minutes trailers were basically just the pilot in 7 minutes. Well,
That was
a lot of the
perfect.
slower moving stuff was obviously left out, and the pilot was a little slow. But you know what? I watched the show, I got hooked on the show, and I loved the show. That show should not have been cancelled after only one season. Neither should Ringer, but now we know that that wasn't just the CW's involvement that did that. Um, but like that, yeah. So at that era, I was I was a Vampire Diaries truther for the majority of my life, um, which is a shame that I never finished the show. But like, and then the originals, What a Time to Be Alive. Obviously, then, of course, my favorite era for the CW was when it became that hub for superhero content. I remember there was a time in 2016. Obviously, I didn't watch Arrow for its first season. I started binging when I found because I watched Grant Gustin and Glee, and then he was going to be in the Flash, so I started binging Arrow through that. Um, I watched that first season where Arrow and the Flash were on, but it wasn't until the CW announced that Legends of Tomorrow was coming, and then they were bringing Supergirl in from CBS, and you just all these collective superhero shows were just going to be on the CW. I was like, wow, so this is what it's like to be a fan of the MCU because I hadn't started the Marvel movies at that point, and like just to know that you were getting new Super DC content every single night from your favorite shared universe. And I remember there was that one time when Black Lightning arrived, and Mark Pedowitz was like, "We're not going to have superhero content on all year round. We're just not. We're not. So we're going to have like Black Lightning on at the time when the other shows were on." Fast forward a year or two later, we had Batwoman, Black Lightning, Legends, Arrow, and the Flash, all a Supergirl, of course, all on across the same TV season. Some of them had to spill into Sunday because there were so many of them. Like, as a superhero fan, as a DC fan, you couldn't ask for more than that. And I do love that the network that grew up as a teen drama itself kind of matured into the superhero content, and yet still had plenty of time for like YA drama in those superhero shows. CW always knew what it was. It evolved. It was like Madonna. It changed with the times. It had a new look, but it was always what it was. I think this is the most awkward phase it's ended in, and it's not even its teenage years. It just feels like it's kind of lost its identity, and that's a shame. Hopefully will work itself out. But like, yeah, so yeah, obviously you knew I was going to say the superhero era, but it's a far more nuanced response than that. I'm not just like a dude bro that got into the CW because it had superhero content. I was watching the teen dramas and the wrestling on this network long before superheroes first showed up on it. So yeah, those first 16 years of the CW, it was like a treasure trove of adventures for me, no matter what I was into at the time. But of course, obviously, yeah, the superhero era
Well,
was.
I mean, it was a network that always catered to niche interests, whether that was YA,
Yeah.
supernatural, sci-fi, superhero. Like there was something for you to watch that wasn't on the other four networks, or even Freeform or ABC Family.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, and it obviously shapeshifted through different years and eras, but I think there was always something a little left of center for somebody to watch if they couldn't find somewhere else.
Yeah,
Hmm.
this is gonna be a cop out, but I don't have one. Um, I
All
don't
that
have a
build up for
favorite.
nothing. Oh my God.
Well, I say that because my obsession with the CW tended to be targeted towards whatever show that I was like deeply invested
Mhm.
in. So I had to think on it like while you guys were talking. If we're gonna go, so I had a huge Twilight phase, which y'all knew. Still love it to pieces, as terrible as it is in parts. So it made sense for me to be like immediately drawn to like the Vampire Diaries and the Secret Circle. And before that, I was watching Gossip Girl and I was tuning into America's Next Top Model. Like they did have me for One Tree Hill. Like I was sat to watch those shows. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like an era that I can fully latch onto. I can latch onto the Vampire Diaries, but the thing that kept ringing in my head was the 100. The run
Yeah.
of the 100 all the way through. When I say that was my favorite CW show, I mean that immensely. I was deep in the trenches of loving it. And I think it's like the only sci-fi show that kind of landed for the
That's
show,
yeah.
but it was just that was my Roman Empire.
Mhm.
Like yeah, I could tell you details of the show down to the season, the episode, and depending on what I was talking about, probably where exactly in that episode. Timestamp, I don't know if I was that good, but like it was for me peak drama, peak tragedy, and I was deeply invested in a way that I have not been invested in the other CW shows like, comparatively. I think they just will never top. There will be no show that tops it on the CW for me as far
I'm
as me.
laughing because like I could say that exact speech about
Like there's just something,
90210.
that it's just that's what, so like that's not Mandy's question, but like that's I think if I were to choose an era, it had to
It's
be
an
an era
era. It
for
was 7
me.
years. 7 years can
Mhm.
be an era.
Yeah, but like I feel like
Even
Mandy
though
was talking about a show.
don't you like carve off like the last season of the 100?
I would call off season 6 too. It's
Okay.
like I mean, I'll take season 6 ending as the ending of the 100, but I would prefer season 5's ending if we're going to do it. Honestly, if we could, as soon as Bellamy and Clark reunite, end of show. Like we just don't need anything else. Like they not to get on the soapbox, I'll say this one thing, and then we're gonna move on. I have never seen a show miss landing the plane, not once, but twice.
Mhm.
I've never seen a team do that in my life, and yet they managed. And I just I don't
I mean,
see
hats
how.
off. That's an achievement. You got to be,
Commitment.
bravo.
Just wow. But yeah, that's there because I feel a speech coming on, and that's just not something we need for the pod, and it's not something we need for our days. Moving on to the next part of Mandy's question. Mandy wanted to know, is it hard to stay connected to the network with them canceling so much content? The answer for me is
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to expand, but just yes, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a
Hmm.
doubt. I don't think that question answer needs nuance. Like we literally kind of went through. It's a hard to be a fan of the CW, especially when you grew up watching all those shows of its original eras. There's very little that's like that anymore, and that's not even the hard part. It's knowing the fact that there's going to be very little that's like that again, um, because you've lost so much. We went through that cancellation period in 2022. We're never going to go through something like that again because they're never going to have that much content off that ilk ever again. And it's sad. It's disheartening just to see these shows and then these shows that aren't going to hit and then they quietly pull them. It's like, what was the point in that? I get you have to experiment, but we've been doing this too long just to kind of get our hopes up for something when you know that the writing is on the wall. And Reed's said this on so many pod episodes over the last 2 years. The writing was on the wall for that CW from 2022, and
In spray paint.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so now, like, if Wild Cards doesn't get a season 2 stateside, we're gonna be in the same boat again.
Hanging up my earbuds.
Just like, no, like no, like the idea that we found a banger, like it
Yeah.
just needs time to grow, and they're like,
Yeah.
no, again, it's
I think
just
the
no.
best answer to this question is that we started our third season of this podcast watching a 20-year-old show from the WB. So that's
Yeah,
the answer.
that speaks
Yes,
volumes.
yes. Okay.
It was a show that had what, 8 episodes? No one
Yep.
knew about it, but we were like, we're watching Tarzan.
I know,
What?
and it just
We would watch anything. We would watch Tarzan before anything they had on the network at that time. And it was it's like they filmed it on an iPhone or from like the very first iPhone that was at like the prototype iPhone, like beta iPhone. Like the quality we watched it in was horrendous.
it's so old that
and
they
worth
had to
every minute.
right, and so old that they had a shout out for AOL.
They
Like
did. They
that's
did.
how
Like
old it is.
that's how hard it is to stay connected to this network right now.
Mhm. Okay, and okay, to end Mandy's questions, what is our favorite pod episode?
Ooh. Oh.
There's so like many that I remember being so fun. I remember last week really enjoying whatever we did last week. I can't remember what we did, but I remember ending the recording like that was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the TV. We were talking about, was it another like statement on the state of television? Like just how everything
I
is
think
working out?
any time that we got to like riff and just like stream of consciousness talk about the things that we really like beyond like actual content, just like talking about television and stuff. I think those are always the most fun. Although
Yeah.
I do like
Yeah.
I always remember the time that Michael was explaining the giant white gorilla in Stargirl and just like losing my mind. That was a really fun episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That came up for me as well. When we started those Stargirl reviews, I always felt like I was fighting for my life. I was like, they're not going to want to listen to this. Like, I can't keep the conversation going for that long.
You're a storyteller. I don't know what to tell you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. You guys were always so receptive, and as that season got more and more bonkers, those reviews got more and more fun, and just seeing you all react out of context was amazing. And the fact we finished that off with a series finale watched together, I'll never forget the chat we had that night, and then the chat we had on the pod the next day. Sorry, just
It was a great finale.
It was. It really, really was. And then that time of year always brings back our Mad Libs episode. Remember that one? That was so much
That
fun.
was fun.
Where we like put together a better schedule than the one the CW really came up with.
And they're honestly kind of like not far off of some of our ideas.
You're right. It's oh my goodness. One other episode I was really proud of was the Batwoman and Legends one. I know that's technically not one of our 100 episodes, but it was a special we did on the week we were supposed to take off after the CW cancelled both of those shows. I'm really proud of the conversation we had and the importance of those shows, just in highlighting them. What else? Sabrina, our deep dives into Superman and Lois or DCTV. There was the one episode where you went all in on the history of DCTV as well. That was great. Reed, our catch up on Riverdale that time last summer, right before it ended. I binged that whole last season right beforehand, and I ended up falling in love with the season. And just to find, because we didn't talk about Riverdale that much at the time, and we had that one conversation about it, and that was really special as well because you know how much of a fan we ended up of being of season 7.
Riverdale series finale episode too was
Oh
really
my
good.
goodness, yeah. That was so good. Because that caught us off guard as well with how good that one was. And then
Tears.
just I've never cried so much at a series.
There
finale
were
in
a
my life.
lot of, I will say, a lot of really good discussions from like season 1 and 2 of Nancy.
Yes, there
She's a
were.
big part of this podcast, and I have to bring her up in episode 100 as
Without
much
a
as, you know, how it ended. But I think the beginning of the journey, we had a lot of fun. There were a lot of great discussions.
Yeah.
And we
Even
had a
that
lot of-
ending part was a good discussion.
Yeah,
Like
it
it
was.
was, we were it was not coming from a place of like the joy that we had for the entire our run until that point, even though season 4 was flagging for us. But it did, it did. For me, I love when we have like left of center conversations. Like whenever the pod veers into another direction, whether it's about CW or it's about TV or it's about how we're feeling, I really enjoy that. Like those are some of my favorite episodes. And when you guys like turn into professors and we're suddenly learning about like the history of 90210, we're learning the history of Batman on the CW. Like it's always so much fun to be able to pull from those bags of our knowledge, because as TV lovers there's just so much that we don't get to talk about on the day-to-day that we know about, and like this is the podcast to do it on. I also enjoyed our Candace Patton Irish episode.
Of course.
Because I just felt like that was so needed, especially because Candace had done her own, was on a podcast talking about everything that she went through. I really love our music conversations. Like those are always fun. And again, state of the TV world conversations. Like they're
Always
just
so much fun.
I read, not to put you on the spot, but one day we need to do a comedy one. Like like
I'm ready.
we really do, because I think they're like so fruitful, and I think it also gives our listeners, our watchers, understanding of our personalities and what we're interested in outside of the CW, because for us this is not a game. We are true to this. We've been true to this since we were wee ones, trying to, like, especially having friends that really weren't into TV that much. Like you trying to have an extensive conversation about what you're watching and they're like, I mean, Pokemon is great, and it's like end of discussion.
I know, I was in like 6th grade binge watching Friends on DVD, and none of my friends were watching Friends, so I was kind of like not feeling highbrow, like, oh, look at me watching a sitcom. But I was like, it wasn't until like later on in life that like Friends took off among my age group. So I was like, where were you guys? I would have talked about that like with you like 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So I do have like that knowledge base of like watching things, and it does, I think, come from also it goes a little bit deeper too, I think, because like I grew up with older brothers who were not significantly older, but a decent amount older than me. So I was watching things outside of my age bracket, and I was aware of things that I think maybe a normal like child wouldn't. It sounds sinister, but it's not. It's just like I was watching MTV when I was in 3rd grade. But it was just like you're aware of certain things because of what's happening, like what's on TV in your household. And I was around a lot of television in my household that wasn't just like Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, although I was watching that too. So a lot of that my interest in, I don't want to say fandom, but like the reason I like TV so much is because like I was raised on it.
Sure.
And thankfully I was able to turn that into a career, and not being told like, go outside, you shouldn't be watching TV. And it's like, if I didn't, we said this a lot in this podcast, like if I didn't watch TV, I wouldn't be able to do my job. So like chicken egg, I don't know.
Right. I'd been told by multiple people when I was younger during my growing up watching TV phase that I need to stop watching too much TV, and that what's TV going to get you out of life? And I mean, like,
a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
This job, these conversations, these friends. And I'm completely agree with what you just said, Reed. I grew up, my older brothers watched WWE when they were younger during the 90s. The Attitude Era was so much popular, and yet when I was growing up watching it just outside of that, none of my generation watched it, and I was like, apparently everybody was watching this like 5 years ago. Where have you all gone? And now it's cool to like WWE again, apparently. So again, that formed a lot of my knowledge base. We're still waiting on me to unleash my WWE knowledge in a future episode. It will happen. The fact is, so much of what we watch, so much of the shows, the things you never knew at the time would be so formative that they ended up like shaping us into these like knowledgeable people in certain topics.
We did do an episode on this, right? Didn't we do like the TV that
shaped us,
grew up on?
Yes,
I like that episode too.
That was
Just
literally my segue.
The little taster of that episode.
We did like and that's why some of our standalones are my favorite, because we talked like the music, the flashbacks, the movies that shaped the spiral when we were younger. They're some of our best conversations, and the most of them are all unplanned and off the cuff. And I remember even when we did the flashbacks episode, we ended that going on a big tangent about the state of TV right now, which had nothing to do with flashbacks, and we tried to reel it back in before the end. And
nothing and everything to do.
That's why some of those episodes end up being some of our best. But like even this conversation, for example, we were asked to list one best episode, and how many did we just bring up?
So many.
And that's only a fraction of the 100 we've recorded. And I think that says a lot about what we've kind of concocted over the last couple of years. And here's to more off the cuff, fun, standalone conversations that turn into some of our favorite episodes ever.
Yes. Well, it's interesting listening to you two talk about, being influenced by your siblings as the oldest and the one who was an only child for a significant portion of my childhood. So that shaped my love of TV. As an only child, you learn to entertain yourself.
See,
And that's what I was doing. I was watching TV.
I think there's something to that too, because like as the youngest, like my brothers were out of the house. So like there was like I wasn't an only child, but it felt that way.
Understandable. Yeah.
So like there's something to that too. There's like a birth order thing and also like I don't know. It's all variables, but I think there's something to that as well.
I think so too, because I think the amount of like how if you have a companion as you're growing up, it's a bit different, like you're influencing each other. I'm influencing my brother. Like I have to tell you a story off pod, like of when it comes to like his influences, which are based on me, until they grew into his own. But like it is interesting, like when you have more time on your hands because you're not if there's not like a readily available playmate and your parents are busy, even if you like say you just played, but they can't play with you all day. So you're like, oh, my show's on, you go watch your show. You have your VHS tapes, like you're rewatching things over and over and over again like kids do. And also for me, I developed an obsession with storytelling. So like it was like you want to see the rest of the story all the way through and you don't want anyone to bother you because Bones is on. And it's like it became a thing. Like I'm the only one in my family who's this obsessed with TV, but it's
Yeah.
because I'm in love with the format. Like they enjoy a TV show and they love a game show. But like it is like specifically this format is something that I'm just absolutely in love with, that I absolutely adore. And this is why I have a problem when people are like, I mean, film is like better. And I'm like, personal opinion, not actually objective. That's not a subjective opinion. Like it's not better. It's just different.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
told this story a lot, but one of my older brothers, he loves movies, like film, like had I don't think he had a film minor, but he had like a film certificate in college because he took a lot of film classes. Loves movies. And when TV started becoming like more popular in like 2007, in that like peak TV era, like he would like dip into shows. Um, but he could never like once it got into like season two, he'd be like, I kind of just want this to be over. Because he was like, I like, when does this end? It could go on forever. And I'm like, "What's the point of a TV show? Like, it just the story keeps going. It's like it's not a 2 hour situation." And he really struggled with that. And there's only like three shows that he's seen to completion and will rewatch. And even today, he'll like talk to me about like streaming shows and be like, "Did you watch this?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I didn't really like it." And I'm like, "I'm not surprised."
Oh man, I love that because it does go to show you how you're also similar but different to other people. Me and my twin brother obviously grew up at the exact same time, literally to the minute. Um,
No.
yeah, like, it's a shock. That's the biggest bombshell I've ever dropped on this podcast. Our older brothers were a decade older than us, so there was a big divide there. So even though I'm not an only child, the two of us practically lived the same life for a solid 15 to 17 years there. So so we kind of felt like all we had was each other at that point because we'd watch the same TV shows together. We grew up listening to the same music. Whenever WWE was on, we'd watch it. We'd watch the same music videos, listen to the same artists. Batman the Animated Series, whatever, all those stuff together. And soaps were always on in our house. And so it was always nice to be able to share TV with someone, but at the same time, the two of us were always like, why does no one else like this when we do? So it was nice to always have that person to talk to. And then he's now in the TV lane as well, in the entertainment industry, writing away like I do. So yeah, growing up watching TV can be incredibly informative in your life, especially when you either do have someone to share it with or don't. I'm glad now that it's taken me to a place where we can have conversations like this on a weekly basis. I couldn't see myself doing anything different, and I wouldn't want to be, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't watch all those shows growing up. So,
Yeah.
a very long-winded way of saying TV is good, folks.
Yes, also when you can nerd out with your sibling, it's
Hmm.
like it's just like amazing. I love nerding out with my brother. Like he's
Same.
very much into animated content. And so a lot of the times, like when he's into a new show, he'll share it with me and then we end up watching the entire show together. Like we're doing that now, actually. I think we have two shows we're watching together. And it's just nice, learning from somebody else who also
Yeah.
really enjoys. It's interesting. He enjoys TV, but he like enjoys the animated versions of content more. And I keep trying to push him towards that. But but it is nice to see, like as you're growing up too, with your siblings, to see what their interests are and to see how much you're interested in their interests, which I'm like absolutely into the things that he likes. Some of them, some other ones he's on his own. But that's the same thing with me, right? Like the
Yeah.
script, like he will not touch a procedural. Like it's not gonna happen. But we are bogged down in this one question because it's such a expansive conversation. So we'll have to move forward to get to Simona's question. And it's the last question of the group. And again, you guys, thank you for asking us. They've led to like some really good conversations and some nostalgia hour too. But Simona wanted to know which TV shows have been underrated over the years despite their great storylines and casts.
Ooh. Ooh. Is this specific to the CW or general?
I'm gonna go
Let's take it as general.
CW
You gonna go
Yeah.
CW? Okay.
because I'm gonna see Dynasty.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Great choice.
Yeah, I mean, Liz Gillies should have been nominated for at the minimum a Golden Globe and was not. Um, yeah, I think that show did things that no one knows about because it wasn't visible except to like I guess, small fandom, but the numbers tell a different story on Netflix. I don't know, but I think it was underrated, and only time will tell if people will rediscover it in another decade and be like, what the hell? Why didn't more people watch it? And I would have been like, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, it's international audience shows that it can go big. It's just a shame that the CW version of it didn't. Um, I guess the three shows came to mind for me, and they're all superhero shows. Surprise, surprise. Um, Legends of Tomorrow was always often forgotten about during that big original superhero push. Everyone talked about Flash, Arrow, Supergirl. It was always overlooked, even though it was probably the most consistent of the four. The things that show did, bonkers, senseless. It should never have aired on network TV, and yet it made it work. Love that show so much. I do think the one my heart really wants to say is Stargirl, because that was like
Mm.
cinema quality television, the special effects, the consistent writing, the old like classic golden age of comic book kind of approach to it. It did feel like each of the seasons felt like a 13-part movie, and normally I hate saying that, but a superhero show can do that well, and it did it really, really well. That show deserved far more exposure. And between some people just being anti-female-led superhero content, between people being anti-CW content, even though it didn't air on the CW to begin with, it's constantly gotten overlooked. But that is by far one of the greatest shows that the genre has ever seen and that the CW has ever seen. And not enough people were willing to have that conversation. So any chance I get, I will say it. And yeah, the performance Brack Bassinger turned in as the lead of that show, career defining. And I hope we get to see her back in the role at some point. Um, and because we're in this RIP old CW era, I do want to close out by saying Superman at Lois. I think if that show premiered during the OG Arrowverse era, it would have been far bigger than it was now. But just generally, people just stopped watching. People built up a threshold and a tolerance to superhero shows because they just bogged down the genre right now. Well, not so much anymore, but 2 or 3 years ago they did. It's just been overlooked. But the fact of the matter is, if that premiered as an Arrowverse show, it would never have been the quality of content that it is now. This is that they've kind of followed in the whole like let's make a Stargirl streaming quality show and produce something completely different. That show is like by far one of the greatest superhero shows, genre shows, family driven shows the world has ever seen, and not enough people are willing to have that conversation. The fact that it's going to end now because the movies don't want to compete with it also leaves a bad taste in my mouth. This is another, to go back to Sabrina's movie versus TV conversation. This is the perfect example of how television can be greater than film, because with the exception of Superman the movie that Christopher Reeve did, no other Superman story has ever come close to delivering the quality that Superman at Lois has delivered. And we're talking almost 100 years of content there for The Man of Steel and Lois Lane, and not enough people are having that conversation. I do hope by the time the show ends, more people do. But anytime I get the chance to force it on people, I will. Superman at Lois is not, again, not, no pun intended, is quite literally out of this world. It deserved far more appreciation and love. But yeah, they're my three shows. And because Superman at Lois is the current one, I wanted to end with that one. More people need to talk about it.
When you said
Yes.
three shows, I guessed them in that order in my head.
No way.
Yes.
So
I almost
predictable.
stopped you and said, "Let me
Friendship.
guess," but I was like, "Let me let
Yeah,
him go."
I'm gonna go with the friendship route because I hate the fact that I'm so damn predictable.
No, because I was like before you got to Stargirl, I was like struggling. I was like Superman, Lois, or what? Supergirl maybe? And I was like, no, it's got to be Superman, and Lois.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's nice. It doesn't get the love it deserves. So anytime I get the chance to remind people, I will, even if it is predictable, apparently.
Because for me, first, Michael, you used the term bogged correctly. I used it wrong a few minutes ago.
Oh,
I
really?
meant we fell down a rabbit hole. Not that we bogged
Oh,
down the
okay.
talk. I was like, not me throwing what was it, sand on the fire we had by using the wrong term. But for my shows, it would be I don't really know if these would be like wild cards or anything, but starting off with Nancy, like regardless of my feelings about season 4, the fact that a good portion of people didn't even know that Nancy Drew had gotten a TV show, and that it was airing, and actually by the time that they knew it was airing, it had gotten canceled, uh, bothers me because the first 2 seasons, particularly, but really the first season is some of the most impeccable television that I've ever watched. I think they
Mhm.
did the narrative they wanted to do, which was about healing. It was very impactful for me watching because I felt like they took the time to allow Nancy to unravel her grief in a way that you don't often get to see, when the shows need to keep churning out episodes. Like we don't really get to sit with grief. And they not only sat with her grief, but they also problematized it, understood it, and then made her grow from it. And I think that there is just such a beautiful journey the show takes through Nancy's story that is just it's just underrated. Like it's one of those things that when we were watching, we were going through a Nancy Drew journey, I just could not, believe that this was a show that was on. That like particularly a show in this genre, because everyone knows supernatural paranormal shows. We always start with tragedy.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean we always get to explore that tragedy. And they were like, no, we're going to do this. She is messy. She is incredibly smart. She's not always emotionally intelligent, and she's very loyal and protective. And I love that Nancy got to be all these different versions of herself, and all of them are worthy. And some of them are great and some of them aren't. And it wasn't like downing her character because she's not always the best. That she's not the greatest with relationships. She learns, and she learns how to be a part of a group and a found family. And I thought that was endlessly important to have on
Mhm.
television. So Nancy would be an underrated show for me. And then Walker Independence, particularly because it came to be on the CW in an era in which it just was not going to be able to grow and thrive the way it needed to, even though the storytelling from day one was on point. One of the
Mhm.
best written shows on television, one of the smartest shows on television.
Could have been the new brand and identity.
Yeah.
Yes, like it really could have been because there was how do you do a Western show on network TV and like
On
Walker
a
and
CW budget at that.
at
Mhm.
that, and they did it, and they still were able to do so by bringing a diversity of storytelling that included like the different characters and how they would navigate in the space in the 1800s and
And
the
like
reality of it.
the visual
Yes,
storytelling.
gorgeous. Like the chances they took, there's a musical number in one of the episodes,
Yeah.
and it works. Like they landed the plane of being able to write a dark romance that where it's not going to work out for the two characters, but are you rooting for them to have scenes? Yes. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know when we were getting towards the end how they were going to do the plot of Abby and Tom and like what it meant for her husband. And every choice they made, I agreed with. I was like, this is how you complicate their relationship by also telling the audience it is never going to happen. But we will give you this version of them that is complex. Like them
Because
riding off the sunset isn't happening, but like it's just still
no, it
fantastic.
was really, yeah, you're right. It was great. Abby was a really like flawed and messy female character who was also still the hero of her own story.
Hmm.
Who, even if she did make a mistake, you were still like, that's my girl and I'm gonna ride with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can't say I wouldn't have done this. Well,
Oh,
like
and
she played with fire and she knew she got burned and she was like, you know what? I got burned and that's
Yeah.
my fault. That's my bad. But I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go back to what I was originally doing.
Yeah,
right?
she wore her scars like badges of honor, and just seeing her like be so badass in the finale, I was one of the most satisfying finales I've ever seen. The show left me feeling so satisfied. I just wanted more for the characters, more from the stories, and
Mhm.
more for the actors to be able to continue it. But like as a first season, we use the term landing the plane a lot on this show when we're talking about shows that did and shows that didn't. Walker Independence, without a doubt, was one of the ones that did.
Yes, and if they
Yeah.
had gotten the push they deserved, they
Hmm.
probably would have done well. Actually, they did better than wild cards. What am I talking about? But the like they did but like to be able to do the numbers that they did, which which is funny because now it's like if shows can get a million by the Live Plus 7 numbers, then they have a good spot on CW. It's like, well, Walker Independence was getting a million by the Live Plus 7 numbers, but like, okay. But it is just, it's amazing to me that it was the quality of the storytelling and the fact, of course, that it was after its parent show that was giving it the ability to reach those numbers. Like
Mhm.
it's hard on the CW to do anything with the 9 o'clock slot. And then they
Mhm.
had a series that worked, that people did get invested in, like outside of those who were in the Walker fandom. It wasn't just the Walker fandom watching. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're
I
literally perfect
just,
examples of that.
right. And so it's just, if only, if it had been a different era, or if it premiere, if they'd gotten that spinoff off the ground pre Next Star stepping in, it
Yeah.
just would have felt like it would have
I mean, I'm
survived.
almost like if it hadn't premiered like 5 years ago, I'm almost glad it premiered when it did because if it premiered like maybe 1 or 2 years earlier, then we would be having a different conversation. It maybe would have ended on a cliffhanger at the end of
Yeah.
season two, and it
Fair.
would have been even a saltier of a blow. So I'm kind of like I'm glad we got what we got, and we didn't get more that would have made it more difficult to part with the show.
Hmm.
Because I don't want it to have been canceled like season three, and we're on like a cliffhanger where like Abby's life or death. We don't know if she died, and it's like that's no place to end the show.
No. No, you're right. You're right about that. I guess, and it does run like a limited series now because yes, you have
Yeah.
that ending with Tom and the father we never get to see. But they literally could just do a movie later, or if what someone
Hmm.
wanted to do a spin-off, or if they do seed a Walker Independence style episode into a season of like if Walker gets a season 5, then that's how you wrap up Wendy
That'd be
if you
cool.
want to. Um, but we'll see because they got to survive the season first.
Hmm.
But that does end our Q&A, you guys. Thank you for rocking with us. We do have to share, though, that we are going on an extended hiatus. We don't have a date for when we're coming back directly, but we should be back before Superman and Lois premieres, which it doesn't mean you'll be waiting until October to see us, but it does mean you're going to be waiting a while. So
Hmm.
just want to be upfront with that. Oh, upfront, because it's upfront week.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like that to be upfront about that. And it makes sense for us anyway. There is nothing on the CW that we are interested in watching. And we got to revamp the podcast again for season 4.
Yeah, season
Hmm.
finale for us and a normal summer hiatus, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we've been renewed. So it's all good.
Yeah. We've been covering the CW summer shows since we started doing this podcast, but the network maybe finally starting, or the world starting to put itself back in normal network TV things. It makes sense for us to take a little summer break. You know what? We've earned it. 100 episodes is a long run.
It is. But thank you for every single episode that you've tuned into and you've
Yeah.
watched and you
Yes.
listened to.
Thank you. And a
Yeah.
special
Yes.
thanks to Kennedy McMahon.
Yes.
Yes.
Just because.
It's bringing the nostalgia back. How many
Yeah.
Canadian
That.
Man spotlights were there during the
No.
Nancy Drew season?
She's like the MVP of this podcast, so I just had to like I was trying to find a segue when you were talking about Nancy, and then I forgot by the end of you were talking about her. Like I need to bring up Kennedy.
Yes, thank you, Kennedy.
Yeah.
Our
Oh,
MVP.
what an era that was. Um, Look, yeah, I know 100 episodes has been an absolutely amazing run so far. We'll be back.
Mm.
Um, well, okay. One constant of this podcast has been my random Arnold Schwarzenegger quote. So
Yes.
Oh
we'll
no.
Yes.
we'll be back. We shall return. But yeah, 100 episodes, no one else I'd rather do this with. And I can't wait for whatever our next era looks like whenever season 4 premieres.
Same. But thank you guys. We're the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.